Hi, this is Larry Watlington of Keep Cyber Simple. Okay, as we've been going through this progression of courses, now we want to get into a part that I really love teaching. It's part of our cybersecurity risk management framework scenario. I've broken this up into two parts, to two separate courses, just to keep it short and digestible. Now, what you may say, what is this about? Well, if you've worked in the business of cybersecurity, especially around the federal government and many other agencies, we always deploy some type of a framework. It could be COVID, it could be many of the other types of frameworks. The one that I'm teaching more familiar with is RMF, Risk Management Framework. Now, many times, see, this is a six-step process, but we talk about these and we make it sound so technical and so in depth. But really, what we do here is no different than what we do in life every day. Hence the word keep cyber simple. Nothing new under the sun. So when we look at the risk management framework, there are six six steps. And this first module, we're going to cover steps 1, 2, and 3. Step 1 is categorization. Step 2 is selecting controls. Step 3, implementing controls. Then we're going to go into part 2 in the second part of this. So when we to help hopefully to explain this process, it takes us back to risk. Everything we do in security is based on risk. And just a little refresher, what is risk? The likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability and the corresponding business impacts. Whether it's somebody breaking in your car or someone trying to steal some type of information, it's all based on risk. It's based on the threat, it's based on the vulnerability, and what is the likelihood of exploitation, okay? Now, I'm saying risk, that it ties all of those together. Vulnerability, threat, likelihood of exploitation. And we talked about before, when we talk risk, we have to talk about the risk response strategies of avoiding risk, transferring risk, accepting it, mitigating it, and deterring it. Deterrence is one that we didn't really talk about in our previous class on this. Avoiding it means get rid of it altogether. You don't want to have the likelihood of being in a car accident, or not so much being in a car accident, but your car being damaged or vandalized. You get rid of the car. That gets rid of the risk. If you still need your car and you're concerned about it being vandalized, what do? You buy insurance. And that's how we transfer risk. Then there's a certain level of risk that we always have to accept, because we could have a new car, it could have insurance on it, but still there's some things that can happen that even the insurance may not cover. What we try to do really is mitigate as much as possible from a cyber security perspective. That's what we're looking to do, is mitigate as risk as much as possible. Scenario we're going to walk through here in a second, it walks through how we take that methodical six-step program process called risk management framework to mitigate, to identify and mitigate our risk with respect to information systems, and how we deter, meaning how do we make things less attractive. You may hear it sometimes talking about reducing your footprint, okay? I mean, to make your assets less attractive for someone else to want to attack and to take advantage of those. Mitigation and deterrence. Okay, so this scenario has nothing to do with what we typically think about from risk management framework, the way it's probably taught many times in a very sterile, business-like environment. This is a scenario of my parents wanting to get a new computer. My parents, and they, somewhere or another along the way, I guess they came to my house and saw my iMacs. I'm a Mac guy, and they wanted a new iMac computer. That's what our scenario is built upon. Now, so when we look at this computer, right, we look at any information system, there are vulnerabilities. What type of vulnerabilities exist in a regular home computer? Well, you could have network and system issues. There's physical, environmental, hailstorms. There could be many things, a hole in the roof and it gets wet. Environmental. And then there's unintentional insider threats. What do I mean by that? Like my mom and my dad, who are not the most highest tech computer users, or most literate computer users in the world, can become their own worst enemy, and it could be their own insider threat just from lack of education, lack of training, and not understanding some of the ramifications. So here's the vulnerabilities. Now let's look at some of the threats. We have external threats. What type of external threats that could be? It could be, here again, someone trying to hack into their system. Vandalism, someone breaks into their house, and could steal this computer. Untrained users, that's a threat. Like we just talked about with my parents, and that could exploit and make them an insider threat, but unintentional. So we have an asset, we have vulnerabilities, and we have threats that are trying to exploit these vulnerabilities. So our goal in this little scenario is to reduce the likelihood of a threat taking advantages of a vulnerability and causing damage to my parents' new computer and the resulting impacts of that. Okay, let's get into this. So when we think risk management framework, step one is system categorization. Categorization, meaning that, so before I can even start thinking about any type of risk with my parents' computer, I have to first start understanding what is it that my parents want to use the computer for. So they want me to get them a new computer. So this is where I'm going to start. First step, I need to determine what my parents are going to use that computer for. What is the information? Not so much the computer itself. And many times in cyber, we are so concerned about protecting the network that we forget about is the information that that network processes, stores, and disseminates is what we are trying to protect. Yes, there is value in hardware, but let me give you this example. So let's say you go to Best Buy or any Newegg online, any of those, and you buy a brand new hard drive, and you pay $250 for that hard drive, okay? And it's still in the box, still shrink wrapped. What is the value of that hard drive? What do you think? If you said $250, you're close to right. Actually, it's probably depreciated because you couldn't sell it for $250. But yeah, that's roughly $250 is the value of that hard drive. Now, you take that hard drive home, you install it, and you load all of your personal financial information, all of your family records, tax returns. Now, what is the value of that hard drive? Yes, to you, it's worth a lot more than $250. You would not sell that to someone now for $250. So that's the first thing you want to do is determine the information or the information types. So when we talk about that, what's the usage? Well, my parents, what are they going to do? They're going to store their personal finance and tax information on that computer. They're going to go on Facebook and Pinterest, probably my mother, a lot. She loves Pinterest. She loves all those recipes and all those nice little gadgets they have. Now, what I didn't realize in the process of this, I learned some great things about my mom and dad. First, my mom is taking online college courses. Who would have ever thought that my mother taking online college courses? So she's going to be using the computer for that. And this was the biggest shocker of all. My dad, he's an avid gamer. I never knew my dad was a closet gamer. But yes, so now I see what they're going to use. These are the types of information that this computer is going to store, process, disseminate. Finance, tax records, need access to the internet to get to certain websites, online college courses, and all the things associated with the course material, and the ability to do some gaming. Next thing we're going to want to know, we need to determine what are our security objectives. What are we trying to do? Okay, when we say security objectives, how are we trying to protect this computer and the information that's on that computer that my parents get? So what I do, I develop some categorization factors, okay? The categorization factors that I developed are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So with the confidentiality, what I mean, I want to keep their information secure. For instance, like here, I want to be sure that their tax records and personal finance is kept secure. So I need some ways to do that with their system. I need to, integrity, keep their information untainted, meaning that it hadn't changed in some way since the time that it was created to the time they need to use it. For instance, here, my mom's taking college courses, so she is struggling having to write papers, homework, and all those things, and she does not want those documents to be tainted in any way. So we need to maintain the integrity, and then we need to keep their information accessible. That's the availability, because they both need to be able to get online as well as get to their finance records and the college courses that my mom's taking, right? So those are my categorization factors, okay? I need to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Next, now we need to decide what the potential impacts are if our security objectives are compromised. What is the so what? What happens? What's going to be the impact if these factors are compromised? So now I develop some impact values. This is just a way of assessing the impact. It could be low, moderate, high. A low impact means that, okay, if something happens here, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. We're going to make it by. Moderate is going to cause some type of serious damage. High is catastrophic. If their tax records and finance information gets out into the wild, that's going to be catastrophic. So these are my impact values: low, moderate, and high. So now that I've got these together, now I can start digging into these information types, all right? So these information types, I just kind of categorize them. I have financial information, internet usage information, educational information, and entertainment based on what my mom and dad told me when I sat at the table with them and asked them, what are y'all going to do with this computer? And they said to me, well, son, we're going to do this, this, and this. Actually, my mom does kind of talk that way, used to. So now that I know my information types, now I can take and bring together the security objectives and the impact values. How can I correlate these together? So if I take a information type, their financial records and tax information, that's the information type. When I look at the security objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, confidentiality, yeah, that's a high, meaning that they want to maintain confidentiality of their financial records. Integrity, for the purpose of this, is going to be a low because they don't want to spend the money to do hashing and all the other things we need to do to maintain high integrity. Availability, when we say availability here, meaning that this isn't something they have to get to right away. So there are no time constraints. So therefore, the availability is low. This is something that after they finish their tax returns, now they're able to store it on a file server, on a hard drive somewhere on their desktop so they can get to it later on. So, but for their finance records, that is a high confidentiality. We want to be sure that's well protected. Internet, like I say, same thing. Confidentiality, low. Integrity, we say that's a low. And availability, we're going to call it for right now a low. Okay? Meaning that, they need to get to the internet, but if they don't get to the internet, here again, it is not the kiss of death. Nothing really happens if internet is out and they can't get to the internet. That's how we came up with these factors. The educational information. Now, confidentiality, low. My mom doesn't really care who sees the papers, her homework, but she's a little concerned about the integrity. She don't want someone going in there making changes to her homework, before she turns it in. So moderate integrity, availability, same thing, kind of low. It doesn't, they don't have to get to that at lightning speed. And the last one, entertainment. Okay, my dad's gaming. So confidentiality, low, integrity, low. And he says, no, for him, availability, he's got to be able to get there. He's got to be able to get to, where he wants to with his games. And that could also impact, because of this one, it could impact internet, because for him to get to his games, he has to have internet. So hopefully you see now how these fit together. How now we take the information types, the security objectives, and the impact values, and we can lay those out. So now this is start giving me some tangible data that I can start working with as I categorize this information system. Okay, so it gives me some types of quantitative information, data. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at each of these columns, and I can come up with a provisional categorization, meaning that if I look at the highest in this column, confidentiality, which is high, so overall confidentiality needs to be high. If I look at integrity, the highest one is a moderate, so same thing. And if I look at availability, the highest is moderate. So I will categorize my parents, the information system, as a high, moderate, moderate. So this now gives me a way to start, again, coming up with some type of semi-quantitative measures of how to assess the controls I need to put in place to protect their information. Then, after talking to my dad, he was really caught up that, am I gaming? So when I explained to him, said, okay, this is what it's going to cost. If you want moderate, well, we're going to have to, step up your internet accessibility, probably have to get you a new router and everything else required to get you to moderate availability. Now, my dad is quite frugal, yes. So his desire to pay extra for an upgraded internet and upgraded modems and all these things, he's like, I don't think so. So he says, you know what? Let's make an adjustment, okay? on this entertainment one, I know I said moderate, but no, let's readjust that back to a low because I don't want to pay. And really, at the end of the day, and this is from a kind of step out of the scenario for a minute, but this is in a real world environment. This is how this works, because when these change, these are driving other controls and it's driving cost. So when you're working with your customer, when you're working with the information owner, it's very important for them to understand that, we start out, yes, I want the world. I want the high confidentiality. I want high integrity. I want high availability. Great. This is what it's going to cost you to get that. And usually you'll see there make some adjustments, some modifications. It's kind of like if we go to buy a car. Oh, I want it all. I want leather seats. I want, the 8-position seats on there, heated seats, heated steering wheel. I want the automatic backup and no hands driving. Okay, that's going to cost you $80,000. Oh, well, in that case, maybe I can do without the heated and cool steering wheel. Maybe I can do without. So we start trimming down to match our budget. This is what an information owner has the right to be able to do, because they are the ones who are owning the risk, right? So that's what my dad did. Says, you know what? Yeah, that's what I really wanted initially, but when I look at the cost, no, let's back that down. So now we have an adjusted categorization of confidentiality, high, integrity, moderate, and availability now is adjusted from the moderate to a low. High, moderate, low. Make sense? Yeah, like I said, this is what we do in life all the time. Another part of categorization, this is where we determine what we call overlays. Now, all an overlay is that it is something based locally or based on the environment that the system is operating in, or some things that are specific to that type of environment, or how the system's operating, that, we need to add some more stringent controls, or sometimes because of that environment, we may want to take away some controls. So when we think about an overlay, okay, give you an example. That's an analogy of an overlay. Well, I found out that, my sister's kids are now living with my mom and dad. So yeah, my mom and dad now have grandkids in the house. They have grandkids. So what do you think comes along with having, a 6 and a 9-year-old grandkids in the house with respect to a new computer? Well, we have to apply some additional protections. That's the purpose of an overlay. It shows now, we've done the categorization, but now there's some additional things we need to add because there's something unique in this environment. So because the kids are there, guess what? Now I've got to be concerned about internet safety, because if they're on the computer, I don't want them just being able to go out to websites any time of night, any time of day, and being able to get to some nefarious websites. Also, I have to be careful now about access control to sensitive files. Before, when it was just my mom and dad, like their finance records, I didn't have to really lock those down. But no, I don't want these kids to have access to my parents or their grandparents' information. That's another type of overlay. And spills and food and stuff on the keyboard. Yes, you know them. They're going to want to be in there playing their games or whatever, and they're going to have their little grubby hands all over the keyboard, and he's going to have his little Coca-Cola in there, and they're going to spill it, right? It's going to happen. It's not if, it's just when. So now, these are what I call the grandkids overlay, and these are the controls that are part of that grandkids overlay. So those are some of the steps that we have with respect to categorization. Two pieces. We categorize, and then we determine the overlays. So let's take a look at this. So if we look at our system, right, with the vulnerabilities and the threats, so we have our impact values, and we have our categorization. So now our system is categorized: confidentiality, high; integrity, moderate; availability, low. And we have to apply the grandkids overlay. So that tells us now, that gives me what I need to know when it comes to protecting my parents' new computer that I'm going to buy for them. Now, let's go to step 2. So now that I have this information, now I need to start selecting the controls. What controls am I going to put in place to meet the parameters of my categorization? All right, so this is just a refresh from step 1, okay? So like I say, these are our information types, and this is how we categorize it, right? So what I did, I went to some friends of mine who are all IT, cyber type individuals, and they sat around a table for me, and they came up with a list of basic computer controls, okay? Yeah. So these are a standard set of security controls. All right. And they numbered each one. Each one has an ID. IMAC 1, IMAC 2, IMAC 3, all the way down to IMAC 6. So and I trusted this peer review of control vetting. Now, realistically, that is very similar to how when they developed NIST 853, which is our standard set of controls that we use on non-classified system, or CNSSI 1253, which governs classified information systems. But yeah, a committee of individuals, they develop the list of controls. Now, there's many, many more. There's over 18 control families, and there's over 900, probably, I'm sure, more than that now, because they're just coming out with version 5, 853 version 5, which is updating some controls. It combines them. But anyway, so that is the list of controls. Okay, this is, okay, great. These are some things that I know that I can put in place to protect my parents' computer. Now, they did something else for me. Not only did they come up with the control set, they also gave their best estimate of how these controls would impact confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So, for instance, if you encrypt the data on a computer, that is going to have a huge impact on confidentiality. Low impact on integrity, and really no impact at all on availability. If I install antivirus software, that's going to have a moderate impact on confidentiality, moderate on integrity, and a moderate on availability. Time of day internet restrictions. That's another control they said, is available so you can put in place. Confidentiality low, integrity low, availability, not an impact at all. So you see, this is how we develop our control set. This is a set of controls. Now, okay, I've got a set of controls. I've got categorization. How do I bring these together? Well, here's what I do. I take a look at my parents', categorization. So confidentiality is a high. And I look at my list. Oh, if confidentiality is high, then I need to select that control. Okay? Now let's take a look at integrity. This is my categorization. I'm going to apply it to the control set. So integrity is moderate. Now I look at my integrity column. Anywhere that I see moderate, okay, I need to select that control, such as this one. Install antivirus software. This one, activate web browser security. Here's another moderate. Implement multi-factor authentication. So now you see, it is telling me based on what I categorize, what controls I need to select and implement. And if I look at availability, we categorize that as a low. So there's one control, but you see I've already selected that one anyway. In the availability column, one control, which is to implement multi-factor authentication, and I've already selected that one anyway. So here are the 4 controls that I need to select to implement for my parents' computer, okay? IMAC 1, encrypt data on the computer. IMAC 2, install antivirus software. IMAC 4, activate web browser security. And IMAC 5, implement multi-factor authentication. Am I finished? What do you think? Am I done? Can I just go start that? No, I can't. Why? We got to remember overlays. Yes, you remember that thing, that the grandkids overlay. Okay, now when I apply the grandkids overlay, where you see these little plus signs, that tells me whatever controls that these call out, I need to implement as part of my grandkids overlay. So what do I see here? So now I see 2 other controls that I need to implement. Set time of day, internet restrictions. That's one. And I go down to the other plus, which is install computer keyboard protectors. So now these are really, for this example, I had to select all of the controls. Now, if they didn't have grandkids, I would only have to select 4 controls. But now I have to select all 6 of these controls. Why? Because confidentiality is a high. Integrity, select all the moderate ones. Availability, select anything that's low, and then apply the grandkids overlay. So I've got 6 controls that I need to take with me into step 3. So step 3 is implementing controls. Step 3, implementing controls. So what we do, we take the security control metrics from step 2 that define the controls to implement. These were the 6 that we wanted to implement. And then we come up with an implementation narrative, meaning how am I going to implement this control? Just a word picture of what we're going to do to implement every one of these controls on my parent's computer. So if I look at iMac 1, encrypt data on the computer. Well, the first thing I can do, if it's a Mac, I can turn on File Vault. And what File Vault is going to do, it is going to do full disk encryption of everything on that hard drive. So that's how I can implement that control. I look at iMac 2, install antivirus software. Okay, I can go buy, Symantec, buy Norton, and install that. And that will implement iMac 2. Now look at iMac 3, set time of day internet restrictions. Now that's a router configuration setting. So within my router, I can actually now set up time of day internet restriction. If you're not familiar with that, that means that for certain users, I can shut them down. So like the grandkids, because this was implemented because of that grandkids overlay, right? So I can have it that the internet's going to shut off at 10 o'clock, right? Or 8 o'clock or whatever time. So now time of day restrictions on internet usage. iMac 4, activate web browser security. Now within many web browsers, there is security that's built into that web browser. I can configure that web browser so to be sure that I'm doing HTTPS, using the secure HTTP protocol. Look at iMac 5, implement multi-factor authentication. I can use a system such as Duo, to do multi-factor. If you remember, we talked multi-factor authentication in a earlier lesson, to where I need something that you know, something you are, something you have. You remember those authentication factors, multi-factor? I want to be sure that I'm selecting at least 2 of those. And Duo will help me do that. I can have something I know and something that I have with Duo. And iMac 6, install computer keyboard covers. Yeah. And was that was also, if you remember, that was one of those that grandkids overlay said I need to do. Why? Because I want to protect the keyboards from those grubby little fingers that's going to be in there and crumbs all of everything. So this is step 2. This is how I can implement these controls. Okay, we selected them in step 1. In step 2, we actually did the categorization to say this is what we need to protect. Step 2, we selected the controls to do that. And now step 3, we can actually implement those controls. So we're going to go into part 2. But like I say, if you look at what we've covered now in the risk management framework, we've covered the first 3 steps. How to categorize our information in the information system. Number 2, how to take that categorization, and then based on whether the categorization is a high or moderate or low, and if there are any overlays, now we can use that to select our controls from a security control traceability matrix. That now says, here's my menu of controls. These are the ones I need to select to implement to meet my categorization. And then the third part of that is now step 3, how do I implement those controls? How do I actually go about finding the right technical or physical or administrative processes to implement the control set? See you back, part 2.